In this video, I'll be explaining how to complete each county's crop data report spreadsheet. Instructions are at the top of the sheet. When you open up the crop spreadsheet, you will see a table that looks like this. You have the ability to edit any of the data in this spreadsheet, but the only sections that need to be adjusted are those sections in the yellow boxes. This is stated in the instructions. As of July 2024, we now receive geospatial FSA CLU data. The acreage data in this spreadsheet is specifically the acres grown in your county's portion of the NSW watershed that covers your county. It could be multiple NSW watersheds that cover parts of your county. You do not need to adjust any acreage values in this spreadsheet except to add manured soybean acres if you have any to report. The only crops included in the spreadsheet are those crops that can be run through the Nitrogen Loss Estimation Worksheet tool, or NLU for short. If you need access to crop data for other crops like pumpkins or tomatoes or peas, please contact me, Allie Dimity. Annually, we are looking to capture total NLU reportable crop acres that were planted and received fertilizer, which includes crops that were planted and succeeded, as well as crops that were planted and failed. We are looking to capture both inorganic and organic fertilizer applications and the total amount of nitrogen applied per acre of the crop per year. If there are multiple fertilization events that occur during the growing season for a crop, please determine what the total application nitrogen rate should be for that crop for the year. And the annual reports that we also prepare, we also capture information on cropland that was idle or fallow in that crop year. Idle and fallow can also include grassland that was not fertilized, harvested, grazed, or worked in any way. Often this acreage for grasses have the intended use category of left standing. If any grass acreage was fallow, please make sure to write that word, fallow, in the fertilization rate column that you will be reporting fertilizations for all the crops for the crop year 2025 reporting year. I encourage you to reach out to local FSA staff to discuss the crop data if you are unsure of how they sort crops into various types and categories. Several local advisory committees invite FSA staff to participate in local meetings or discuss crop report data with them. Again, you do not need to adjust any acreage values in this spreadsheet, except to report manured soybean acres, if you have any to report. The acres in that column are the acres that were grown in your county's portion of NSW watersheds or basins based on geospatial processing of FSA CLU data. It is generally accurate. The NLU tool has different categories for particularly soybeans, which is why we ask for manured and double crop soybean information separately. Acres of manured beans are not captured in available federal data sets, and so that is why we ask LECs to inform acreage estimates for that specific bean category every year. If you have any waste lagoon or pond closures from the Swine and Dairy Assistance Program or other programs, you may have manured bean acres to report this crop year or in a future crop reporting year. Keep this in mind and add information into the spreadsheet about manured bean activity happening in your county's portion of NSW watersheds and basins for annual reporting. The FSA does use these plant primary status codes to identify crops that are meeting double cropping definitions. So if we scroll down to soybeans, you can see for the plant primary status code for this particular soybean type, it has a category of D. For soybeans, if the plant primary status code column has a D, an E, F, G, H, or O value, that commodity should have met FSA's double cropping definition. Please be mindful of looking at the primary status code column to identify double cropped acreages of crops, particularly for soybeans, and adjusting fertilization rates accordingly. Lastly, you will see fertilization rates that were reported last year for the crop in question and a blank column to include fertilization rates for this year. So last year's rate, this year's rate. Piedmont counties that grew corn in crop year 2025 will also have a residue management column to estimate the percentage of corn grown under no-till management. Throughout the spreadsheet, I include notes and comments, and I try to explain the data being requested for the county to submit this year. So in the next little bit, we're going to go through the motions to fully complete this crop spreadsheet together. So we can read through the instructions at the top of the sheet. I've largely already gone through them in my initial spiel here before we've gotten into looking at filling out this spreadsheet together. So I'm not going to go over those again, but just make sure to know that those are available if you need a quick reminder about the process that needs to happen with filling out this spreadsheet. So scrolling down here to our first crop, which is corn, we can see that we had 4 different types of corn that were grown, in the sense that some of this corn was grown for intended use of grain, fresh, or left standing. We had sweet corn, different varieties here, white and yellow golden early. We also had yellow field corn as well. Last year, for all of the different corn varieties and types and intended uses, they were essentially determined to be fertilized the same at around 180 pounds of nitrogen per acre in crop year 2024. Let's say that we talked with Cooperative Extension field crop agent and some farmers, possibly the regional agronomist. Maybe we had a meeting and had all these folks in the room and talked about these at the same time together. And the group consensus was this actually needs to be increased to about 185 pounds of nitrogen per acre, because that is what folks are putting out to get maximum yields for these crops. So we will need to adjust the fertilization rate this year by an additional 5 pounds. And let's say our local NRCS and Soil and Water Conservation District staff are knowledgeable about the amount of farmers that are applying no-till management to the corn production that they are growing. And let's say that they have a best professional estimate that around 85% of the corn producers in the county, in the newest portion of the county, newest basin portion of the county, are growing corn in no-till management. So 85% here. All right, we filled out corn. Moving down to cotton. Last year's rate was 80 pounds of nitrogen per acre, both for irrigated cotton, around 144 acres of irrigated cotton, as well as 700 and something acres here of non-irrigated cotton. Let's say that that was approximately the same this year for crop year 2025 based on conversations and knowledge about the growing that crop in the county. Moving down to cucumbers, we had about 9 acres of cucumbers that were grown at 120 pounds of nitrogen per acre. Let's say that, again, that was about the same this year for crop year 2025. You'll notice that I have skipped over a couple of rows. These rows, they don't have any borders around them. You don't have to report fertilization rates for CRP or cover crops or for fallow land that has been pulled from FSA and is available. The comments that are included in column H are to help you with understanding what purpose this data might be useful for. So this is CRP riparian buffer acres. There is about 8.2 acres that were in the noose This might have been re-enrolled acreage. It might be newly implemented acres. If it's newly implemented, this might be able to be counted towards buffer estimates in the BMP spreadsheet. But if you don't have any information besides just having this acreage value, please don't report this in the BMP spreadsheet because it could have possibly been captured in a previous reporting year. So this is just included for the LAC's knowledge, but additional local information needs to inform your LAC on whether it is appropriate to report that acreage as new acreage for reporting, or if it's, you know, just useful information to know that this was re-enrolled and continues to serve as a buffering capacity on ag land in your county. Also for cover crops, again, no rate needs to be reported for those. These are just included to help the LACs with BMP estimates. When we get to the BMP spreadsheet, LACs are going to be asked to come up with a best estimate for unfertilized, unharvested cover crops that were grown in crop year 2025. I'm not the most up to date on FSA's policy with regards to cover crops, if they allow for fertilization or harvesting of any cover crop. I don't think that they do, but I could be wrong. I just include these acreage totals in here so the LAC is aware of this acreage that is being reported as cover to FSA, because that might inform what unfertilized, unharvested cover crop you want to report for your county for BMP reporting for the crop year 2025, which we're not going to get into in this video since this is just focused on the FSA crop report spreadsheet. But again, this information is just available to help your LAC with knowing about this particular data because it might be useful in filling out another spreadsheet. All right, we are down to grass categories here. Our next grass category is coastal Bermuda. We can see that the intended uses here, 600 acres was for forage, 7 was left standing. Both of those acreage types were estimated to have been fertilized at 250 pounds of nitrogen per acre. So we will keep that the same this year because there was not any indication from, you know, the folks that we talked to, members of our LAC, and anybody else that we needed to consult to get a good number for coastal Bermuda grass that has changed. For fescue, or tall fescue grown for the intended use of a forage, let's say that 85 was still a good number for fertilization of that crop for crop year 2025. Now we're down to the grass category of native with an intended use of less standing. We can see in our column H, which is describing the fertilization rate reported for last year, that there wasn't a rate reported last year. Instead, this acreage was included in a fallow total. The instruction is then to write fallow if this acreage was not fertilized and idle in crop year 2025. Again, for grassland that was not fertilized, harvested, grazed, or worked in any way, we can count that in our idle and fallow totals. And often we see this with grass native left standing crops, but there might be some other grass left standing varieties that can be captured in fallow totals. If that's the case, please write fallow in this fertilization rate column for crop year 2025. If you just write in 0 here, I don't know if that means that the crop didn't receive any fertilizer, but it was harvested. I also don't know if that crop might have been grazed in some way, in which case if it was grazed, there might be some estimate for fertilization that we should put together for organic matter contributions from whatever was grazing that grass. So it's really just beneficial for you to write the word fallow in that column to help me know when I'm reviewing these spreadsheets for accuracy and completeness that that grass was not worked in any way, not fertilized, not harvested, grazed, etc. All right, moving down to orchard grass. We also have a comment here. No rate was reported. Why? Because no acreage was grown in crop year 2024. So in this situation, we didn't have a rate for last year, not because this grass wasn't fertilized or because this grass was fallow. It's just because we didn't have any that was determined to have been grown last year in the county's portion of the Neuse Basin in this demo example. So a rate needs to be reported this year if this, orchard grassland was fertilized. And let's say it was fertilized. It was fertilized at approximately the same rate as the fescue tall forage acreage. So we need to put an 85 pounds of nitrogen per acre rate for that orchard grass. All right, moving down, we're going to skip this fallow row here. Again, we look at fallow and idle land and we calculate a total value for each county and include that in the annual report every year, but you don't need to report a fertilization rate on that land for obvious reasons. All right, we're now down to mixed forage. Again, no rate was reported for mixed forage acreage. In this case, this acreage had been reported as fallow in the previous year. So again, the instruction is to write fallow if this acreage was not fertilized and idle in crop year 2025. Let's say that it actually wasn't fallow this in crop year 2025 based on conversations, etc., with staff and with local farmers or residents or whoever would be knowledgeable about this mixed forage acreage. Let's say that we know that this acreage was actually fertilized at a rate of about 30 pounds of nitrogen per acre. Not much, but it was fertilized a little bit. So we do need to add that fertilization rate in for that crop for the reporting year. All right, moving down to oats. Let's say again we were talking to growers, farmers, staff, and 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre, which was reported last year, is still pretty accurate with what folks are putting out for growing oats. Let's say we get to peanuts and we have seen an increase of fertilization for peanuts to achieve higher yields. So we're seeing farmers actually put out 30 pounds of nitrogen per acre for peanut growing. So we need to increase that up. And for sorghum, let's say that similar to oats, not much change between last year and this year, so we're going to keep that at 90. So we will move forward with that. Now we're down into the soybean realm. So again, with soybeans, with NLU, we report soybeans in multiple categories. We can report soybeans full season, soybeans double cropped, soybeans manured, and soybeans manured double cropped. For this purposes, I have listed out that there is 24,000 or so acres of soybeans that have a plant primary status code of I. I believe that stands for initial, which would be initial crop, which means it would be the full season of the soybean. And let's say that for that crop, we can see in our 2024 fertilization rate column that it was fertilized at around 5 pounds of nitrogen per acre on average in the county for crop year 2024, and that holds true for crop year 2025 as well. So we're going to keep that the same. Our next row for soybeans, we have a D in this plant primary status column. Again, for soybeans, if the plant primary status code in this column is a D, E, F, G, H, or O value, it has met the FSA's double cropping definition. And let's say that double crop soybeans are still being fertilized differently, as this comment in column H suggests, and that is happening again in 2025, and double crop soybeans are not getting any extra fertilizer. So there is an essentially zero application rate of soybean, zero application rate of fertilizer on soybean acres that have this double cropped definition here for crop year 2025. Now we're down to the manured soybean category. Again, we do not have any manured acreage information on soybeans from federal data sets. So this is where the LAC needs to come in and help inform what the acreage of manure beans might be happening in the county and what the rate of manure application on those beans is. So if we go to our comment here, last year a rate of 30 pounds of nitrogen per acre was reported for soybeans. This year, estimate an acreage amount and report a rate for manured beans. Let's say we had a swine and dairy assistance program project where we had about 100 acres of soybeans fertilized at 30 pounds of nitrogen per acre that received manure. So let's say that we had that situation and we need to report that this year. All right, let's go down to the last two crops in our crop report, tobacco and wheat. And let's say that tobacco, we actually had a little bit of a drop in our fertilizer. Let's say that folks were actually putting out around 80 pounds of nitrogen per acre based on, again, conversations with staff, farmers, other folks that are knowledgeable about the growth of tobacco in the county and what folks are actually putting out on the ground to achieve yields for that crop. And then lastly, for wheat, let's say that 85 is no longer representative of what majority of folks are putting out on wheat crops. Let's say it's closer to what folks are putting out for growing oats, which is around 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre. So we need to increase this to around 100 nitrogen per acre fertilization. All right, with that, we can see that we filled out numbers or a word to indicate fallow in all of our yellow boxes. So we have reviewed the spreadsheet filled with FSA crop data. We've not made any changes to the acres grown column, this column G in this example spreadsheet, except to provide acreage estimate for manured beans, which we have done. For step 3, we have filled in fertilization rates for all the crops, and for corn, we've updated the percentage that's grown under no-till management. So with that, the last couple of steps in the instructions on this spreadsheet indicate that a BMP spreadsheet needs to be reviewed and filled out if that hasn't already yet been done, and then to send Allie an email when the county crop and BMP spreadsheets have been updated. So my contact information is listed in these instructions. I welcome any questions that you all have, and I welcome feedback and updates as you all complete your crop and BMP spreadsheets for crop year 2025 reporting this year. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need support or if you need additional guidance. With that, this concludes our video on the FSA crop report spreadsheet and filling this out for crop year 2025 reporting. Please review the BMP spreadsheet as well as other videos that are available if you need assistance in filling out other county data report information for this reporting year. Thank you.